Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Long time. I know. It's been a while. It's like the
Hi.
whole month has been all messed up.
Yes, I know. I was like, oh, he must be excited that we don't have a meeting tomorrow.
I was like, all right, I got Tuesday night, I got Wednesday night. I'm out at an event on Thursday night. I'm like, oh boy, what a week. I gotta mow my lawn like last night. So I was trying to like figure out when I was, but as it turns out, no meeting. So I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that's nice. I don't know. I don't have Jim's number. He said he was coming. Oh,
Okay.
wait, maybe I do. And Chuck said that he was running a little late. You saw that
Yeah,
one.
I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I sent a bunch, I sent some attachments to that invite.
Yeah, I was looking at those, or I started to look at those.
Okay, yeah, those are some of the things that we'll go over tonight. Oh, where is my Zoom link for this? There it is. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, good evening.
We're just
Hey
waiting.
there, Mike.
Hi, nice to see you.
How are you?
Good.
Okay, I just emailed Jim. We've got one member it's running a little late, so we're just, chit chatting in between.
Is this the group? Charles, I see Leo imminent is on.
Yeah, well, because you're a subcommittee that was
That's
created,
that's
it's
good.
a public meeting, so.
Yeah, it's fine. I didn't know if there was others. This wasn't a joint meeting, so this was just us trying to better understand and see what we might want to do with the information you've already digested and worked through and presented 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Give you
Put
one
a
more
thousand in
chance.
one. Right.
Just
You wouldn't
just
want me
one
to
more.
lose. Yeah, you wouldn't want me to get rusty or
It's been a
anything.
while, so you got to get you some practice.
We'll stop. I'll post not this part. Once you're an actual subcommittee, I'll post this. We won't post this part.
Yeah. Do we have to officially open the subcommittee meeting and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff?
Yep.
Oh, I don't have to read the preamble, do I?
No, this is
Okay.
less official. Just, official, but less official.
But really, it's just Chuck, uh,
You,
Jim and
yeah.
I. Okay. And we
Let
take a
me just,
motion and we do all that stuff. Okay. See, I've missed 2 meetings now, being out of country and out of wherever, and I'm lost now, trying to figure out what I got to do here again.
yeah. How was Amsterdam? I know it was for work, but did you do
Part
anything?
part was work. We went Friday night into Saturday, got Saturday and Sunday in Amsterdam with some walking tours and different things and food stuff. Then I went the hotel that our global conference was at was down by the airport. So I went down there and my wife continued to do tours in Amsterdam and up in another place northwest of Amsterdam. So she got to travel back to Amsterdam the 3 days I was in business meetings. And then we headed south down into, I called it Gouda because Gouda cheese, I've always called it Gouda, it's Hoda, or with a really Hoda. And I'm like, I'm not going to eat the cheese anymore if I got to call it Hoda cheese. So forget that. We went to Rotterdam, we went to The Hague and did a couple of days and then came back up. And so we had some good vacation, a few vacation days in and amongst the work stuff.
That's a lot. Wow.
But don't call it Gouda cheese. Just
No.
don't call it Gouda cheese.
Not around you, because yeah. I don't want to
Well,
ruin it for you.
half our company is located in Amsterdam, so I get a lot of Dutch influence. And in case they haven't told you, they are the tallest and the smartest population on Earth. Just
Oh.
and if you meet with them, they'll probably tell you that straight up. Because they do with me every time. Just in case anybody was wondering. Hey, Chuck. Oh, not on, you're on mute.
How about
There.
now?
Yeah.
Hey. All right.
But you were wondering if I was coming back to run a meeting, huh?
I apologize for my tardiness. I was going to try to get on my computer. I gave up. I said, I'm just going on my tablet.
We're waiting for Jim.
So it sounds like you had a good trip. I caught the last part of it about the cheese. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, some interesting history, and it's a fascinating city. And you get down south to the biggest port in Europe is in Rotterdam, and a history of World War II where the Germans came in and like wiped out Rotterdam and others. It's if you, I'm not, I didn't study a lot of history when I was in school, but the more I go to places and hear the history, I get fascinated by how things have changed over, 50, 75 years of 100 years of wars and stuff. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, I went over to England and we visited the cliffs of Dover. And it was very interesting because that was like a base hub operation. And it was, like you said, very interesting to hear
Yeah.
their story and how the war affected them and what they did. It was just,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, fascinating.
If you ever get a chance, I was in London last year because I went to Cambridge University for a sustainability conference on work, but I got some vacation time in then too. And we went out to Omaha Beach and the cemetery. And I'll tell you, it is an absolutely humbling experience. If you ever want to understand the sacrifice people made, go there.
Oh,
It brings a tear to your eye when you're standing there looking at gravesite after gravesite, and the crosses, no matter which way you look, are 100% perfectly aligned. Any angle, it's like you look at it and go, somebody took care to honor these people, and you can still see the bomb craters. You can still see, where the first, I think it was Rangers came in, and like 3/4 of them didn't make it on the first assault. It's like, oh my God. Really crazy stuff. Stay in a little town called Hunflor, fantastic little town, and then go to Normandy.
I haven't heard back on email and I'll call him, real life call him now.
have
Not
you
just
reached
that
out?
millennial texting that we do, right?
We reached out to Rob to see if he's available. He's our alternate, right?
Yeah, we can have I don't know if I have Rob's don't know if I put all the new names in my phone book yet.
Okay, I just voice confirmed with Jim. He is on his way.
All right.
He said, is that meeting tonight happening now? I said, yes, yes. 10 minutes ago now. Yes, yes. I get it.
Well,
We all get wrapped up in projects.
and it's a Tuesday, it's not Wednesday.
That's true, right?
And I'm all messed up because we're meeting on a Tuesday, and one of the pharmacists I work with, who usually works Wednesday through Saturday, worked today. So now I can completely messed up on what day of the week it is.
All right. Yay, Jim is here.
Yeah,
All
Jim.
right.
So sorry. I was in my cave.
Glad you're here, because otherwise we would have had to try to find Mr. English. So
Yes, no, I'm happy to, I'm glad to come on. I just.
all right, I guess this is more formal than I thought, so I guess we're gonna make a motion. Do we have a motion to open the subcommittee meeting for what do we call this thing?
MBTA.
MBTA communities zoning.
So moved.
I
Second,
guess, there you go. We only have one other second, so.
Yeah. Not a lot of options.
Now, if either one of you say no to, do you accept this? We're in trouble. Any questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Woodhams,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence,
aye.
Mike McKnight, aye. 3 in favor, no one opposed. Motion carries. We are open for business.
That was close.
Yeah, that was a close vote. Oh, so Rachel and I had actually talked about this a few weeks back and said, what should we be doing to kind of make sure that we as a subcommittee and then can report back to the planning board and having listened to the Board of Selectmen meetings and the other subcommittees, vetted and, what's our stance going to be? Are we going to come up with anything different than Rachel's come up with? Are we going to make a recommendation to include other properties that others think are important, like the outlets? Are we comfortable? And one of my real questions is, are we comfortable in what our decision-making capability is here? Because Rachel, you've put forward a recommendation, you've socialized that. It hasn't gotten the best reviews from certain people, but as a planning board, are we looking at that as the option, or should we be looking at others? And I think in terms of our vote, we have 3 options. We can take no action, we can take negative action, we can take positive action. But if we do that, and we're putting forward the proposal, we certainly, that'd be interesting to have a proposal that the planning board is generating and we take no action on or take negative action on. So I don't know, this gets a little bit interesting when you start to look at what we're going to put forward to town floor as a recommendation versus what we've heard a lot about, which are a lot of opinions about what should be done. So I don't know. Maybe just start there, Rachel, in terms of what we're supposed to be doing as a planning board on this thing, because it's in our purview and we have a lot of people speaking in our ears.
Yeah, and I think we had, somebody from EOHLC had come and that they had spoken with the select board, and which is the state that's overseeing this MBTA communities. And you're absolutely right. It is the planning board's purview to review and make recommendations. Town meeting ultimately votes on it. If town meeting votes it down, then it gets voted down. But you've done what the state is asking you to do, which is come up with a zone and present it to town meeting. you know, as you know, nobody is going to be happy with every decision that you make, you know. And so it's just, as you had made a comment in another meeting, a previous meeting, what are you guys comfortable with, though? You know, bringing a plan to town meeting that you are comfortable with moving forward, if and when it does get developed, you know, in that sort of time frame, or that, you know. And then the only other consideration was, you know, there's a lot of, as you said, a lot of different things, other sites, other places. I think you're using your master plan as a guide for you. If you don't listen to the state regulations or guidelines, using your master plan gives you a narrowing down area, which is how these areas were sort of come up with at the end of the day, that were presented to you. We have now, since, you know, hearing conversations with other people, we've included the outlets, and have, as I suggested at a previous meeting, if you feel strongly about that as a community and that's where you want it to go, then we should submit for the application, or you can correct me, pre-adoption with the state. And that way we know ahead of time, you know, before it gets to town meeting, whether or not the state is going to approve that or like that location. And so as an alternative too, I had suggested coming up with a plan B in case the outlets are not accepted by the state. And that's why at that last meeting, you guys had sort of narrowed down to, okay, well, we know the downtown is going to be developed. Let's see if we can get credit for that with this mandatory mixed use bylaw. Then that reduces our count by 25% of our capacity. And so let's look at this Wampum 1A area. And then as an alternative, let's look at just doing the whole zone over at the outlets. So you've got, you know, two options, three options, if you just want to go with the one Wampum area as your traditional multifamily community development overlay.
So you're
And
saying
so-
the dump is out?
Yes, it is. It is. It's a town-owned property, so it's an excluded land.
Okay.
And so as part of that, I did, you know, I've created 2 maps, which were linked in that invite, and they're up on the website as well. One is an excluded land map, which the state has called out as exactly that, excluded land. So you cannot put this zone on those properties or on those areas. And then I've included another map, which is a sensitive land area map, which you can develop on those. You can put the zone on these. But because it is a sensitive area, whether it be for wetlands or a zone 2 or, you know, I have the legend in there. The development of those areas should be limited. And so that's just something that you'd want to, when you get to that, you may want to, the bylaw will have to sort of make sure that you are addressing that within the, you know, eventual MBTA overlay district.
I just opened up your 2 maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So anything that has a color is exempt,
Yeah, it depends on which one you're looking at.
I'm looking at the excluded land.
Correct. All of
So
those.
anything that has a color is excluded?
Correct.
Okay.
I just,
try and understand the legend.
instead of just doing one color saying excluded, I figured people would want to say, well, why is this excluded? So I included a legend.
If you overlay these 2 maps, the excluded and the sensitive, really, I mean, honestly, the northeast, the entire, from the halfway up northeast, looks like it's all excluded land, right? Up towards, from almost 495 up, except for something way up by Norfolk.
What is sensitive about the outlets?
It is zone 2. It's
Oh.
so it's an area of recharge for our wells.
Hmm.
Ah,
And because Wrentham is very fortunate in that it gets all of its drinking water within its, town boundaries. But also as part of that, there's a lot of sensitive area too.
well, Mike, I don't know how much of the conversation that we've been having, you've had a chance to review on all the different meetings? Because it
I mean,
seems like you were out for a meeting or maybe even two.
yeah, pretty much a bit out of pocket, so
Have you had a chance to review it?
I have not.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll give you my broad, back of the envelope thinking of what I've been saying at those meetings.
Sure.
And kind of where I've come to on it, and I'm not attached to this. It doesn't have to go this way. I'll vote for something else. Like, don't get me wrong about this. But it seems like if we take the development that everybody's excited about in the town center, and we zone that and then go ahead with the development that we've been discussing, which the developers have now applied for, Rachel, formally?
Yeah, we
Okay,
got the
great.
official stuff today.
So they're
Yep.
in the pipeline, and I believe you said they'd be happy to sign some kind of paper that says, oh, if you change the zoning to this, we're not gonna change our project substantially. Is that accurate? They're willing to kind of stay the course
Yes.
with this one? Yeah.
Yes,
And that's
So,
8 units an acre max, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
correct.
yeah.
Okay.
And then and I would, the sense, like the sensible thing about the outlets, which the select board seems to be fond of as an option. If we took some section of the outlets or whatever section we would need to and made that the second parcel. And then as I understood it from watching the meeting at the Fisk Library and watching the meeting and hearing Rachel and some of the others who have spoken at our planning board meetings, we can attempt to also put some guidelines around if you go build there, you need to add this, that, and the other thing to make it a town center type place. Like you need to put in a village green of said size, or you need to put in a playground, or you need to put in a dog park, or whatever. And so it's like, okay, yes, you can build this here. And I guess the counterintuitive benefit is, God forbid, retail continues to go the way of the dodo, and that outlet begins to be less and less productive. And the town is looking for a way to shift that into a different tax basis. Maybe this is a handy option. And so there's that. And then, yes, I mean, one of the drawbacks, just to include both sides of the conversation, is they already have like a private septic. So expanding that or whatever might make it more attractive to actually build something. So if our strategy was to put it in a place where we didn't think anybody would want to build anything, that wouldn't maybe be the best place to execute that strategy. So that's one thought that people
Exactly.
have expressed as I remember it. And then, so, and it seems to me, it wouldn't have to be the whole of the outlets, right? It could be, is the remaining need cover all of the outlets? Have you looked into that, Rachel? I don't think I specifically asked you to.
You'd still have to, we could take credit by creating that mandatory mixed use district, you could get the 25% reduction if it gets approved, but you still have to come up with that 50 acres. So we'd still have to designate.
Another 50 acres?
Yes.
So you can't include the acreage that gives you the reduction.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't include the downtown acreage, but we do get the reduction in the density.
And that
All
would
right, I
be
understand.
150 units reduction, so we'd only need 500?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So then if we put that down there, and from the standpoint of the eventual residents in that development, should it come to pass, it seems to me if the idea is to get them within striking distance of public transportation, having to go 200 yards to an exit onto 495, there really isn't any more minimal impact to traffic in the town than commuters leaving that area where the outlet is, driving to 495 and going up to the Franklin T, or going over to Route 1 and up to the, the Foxborough T, or whatever it is. So if we're actually looking to satisfy the intent of dense housing in a place that's accessible to a T that we don't have, that only exists in surrounding communities, that main artery seems to be a pretty good, like, we could make the case, if we have to have it approved, that we want to put it there because of that accessibility piece. Kind of. So those are just some thoughts that have, that I've expressed over the couple of meetings. One way of looking at it. It seems like the select board might think that was a pretty decent idea. It does provide like a plan B for the outlet for the town from a revenue stream. And to me, that kind of goes together, but I agree with Rachel. I mean, I accept Rachel telling me, because it wasn't my thought, it was her thought that I, that I like am now glomming onto, if you will, is, God, if we want to try that, let's put a proposal together and get that thing up there for approval as soon as possible, so that they can tell us, yeah, that's not going to work, or yeah, that is going to work. And we can always fall back on that wampum corner thing as our recommendation, because we know it suits the bill, or at least we feel confident it suits the bill, right? Rachel?
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
the other thought you have with having the, on the Wampum 1A area, is that you've got probably about 20 parcel owners, 18 parcels, but probably about 26 if you include, I'm trying to count how many are in those condos, property owners that would have to all agree to develop that area. So
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
take a while.
But it could be a big payday for someone, and that tends to get people to agree,
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, it's just the way life is. So Mike, as I've been trying to think through this thing and come up with some options, that seems to me like, if the select board is really interested in us, doing something else than what we were just, what Rachel came up with initially, of all the things I've heard and tried to put together in my brain, that's the logic I've arrived at. If and only if we can get a proposal up there, get it reviewed, get it back on time, and do all the things in order to make that happen. And I guess if we do want to do that, this working group wants to say, yeah, let's try to do that, because I guess there's work to do to figure out. I mean, there are other communities who have put restrictions and you have to develop it into a town center kind of laws, and that we could kind of maybe not copy and paste, but certainly be informed by, in creating our own set of regulations. So I think I've said everything that is on my mind about that. It's a viable option, and I'm, like I said, I am completely cool with just like going to a border way, and like, you know what, if that's what comes to be, that's what comes to be. Someday some piece of this town is going to grow. We cannot freeze the town in time. And, the town is lovely, and it will be lovely still, and so so be it. But,
Yeah.
that's my best thinking based on everything I've heard. And I just wanted to kind of catch you up more than anything, Mike. And the other members, if they hadn't heard all the different things, on this working group, if they hadn't heard all of the things that I had heard or hadn't had a chance. Chuck, I don't know if you have any additional comments along the lines of what I said, but I think I'll stop talking now and let others. Thank you for helping me walk through that and not forget anything, Rachel. All of my thinking comes from you. It comes from things I've heard from you.
No, I think you summed that up pretty well, Jim. My biggest concern, I guess we have to look at this and we have to say, Is this something that we want to actively develop as a town, or do we want to try to do it in a way that maybe we hedge our bets a little bit? And that's my fear, and you touched upon it because it's been said many times with using the outlets, is they've got infrastructure already built in. One of the biggest negatives to building something of this scale in this town is lack of town sewer. And therefore I think it makes it less of a target for a developer who wants to build something like that. I mean, anything can be done eventually, but by putting it at the outlets, it's ready-made kind of. And as far as I know, that there's been discussion amongst at least some of the select board that, well, if the outlets, something happens, we need a plan B. There's nothing saying that if 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, if something happens, that we couldn't go back and adopt this zone. There's nothing saying we can't expand this at a later date, right? I mean, we have to have 50 acres minimum now by the end of the year. Nothing saying that 5 years from now, we couldn't say, hey, maybe that'd be a good place to do it. And we take a town meeting vote to expand it to include that area. There's nothing stopping us from doing that somewhere down the line. I'm just fearful that it would be an easy target to build this. So I guess then we have to decide, is it something we really want to actively look at, saying, okay, well, I guess my feeling is, are we trying to get this stuff built, or are we trying to keep it from being built? And that's a philosophical thing that has divided the town on a number of levels. So,
I guess that's where my point is, because I'm hearing that if you put this many houses up, the infrastructure issues around schools, around public safety, fire, police, right, water, are going to croak us. And so if you think about the outlets as having one of the 30% of our tax revenue, if you replace that with housing, one, you don't get anywhere close.
right.
And then two, if you add to the infrastructure issues because of what you put there, you kind of double down on the problem. And that's been my concern about the outlets is, we've seen indoor malls go out and now they're turning them into housing in some places. Will that be the case? Who knows? But to your point, if it's an easy target and the sales aren't there and General Growth or Simon are looking for options, to me, it's too easy a slam dunk, and the town loses on those two fronts. Yeah, we get the zoning in place, but we don't get the tax revenue, and we're getting hit with all kinds of needs that we can't afford. I was coming from where, and before I say that, Rachel, a question: if we do it along Wampum Corner along 1A, and it's 12 different parcels, can't a particular developer with 1 acre lot do 15 units on that if he can solve the sewage problem?
On one acre.
Has to be 5 acres
Sorry,
minimum.
not 1 acre, sorry.
Or is it a 5 acre minimum to build?
But 5 acre minimum area that we have to set aside.
Right, of a zone, that's the smallest
Right.
size.
But let's say you could get all 50 acres along Route 1A, and it's 12 different parcel owners.
Gotcha.
Any one of those parcel owners could build at 15 units per acre on their property, couldn't they, if they could solve for essentially sewage?
Yes.
So you could have a 5 acre lot, which is maybe that one with the tennis court and the apartments, and they say a better thing here is to tear that down and build something else. And now all of a sudden, that 50 acres along that stretch, or whatever portion of that 50 acres is along that stretch, can be developed by individual property owners at 15 units an acre. So
yes, I mean, you've got water is an issue. Yeah, thank you. Still be limited by the dimensional requirements, you know,
Right.
again, this is all, it's a 15% also, impervious because you're in the aquifer protection, district, which is your zone 2.
Yeah.
Only 15, units per acre, so, you've got to locate the septic, which takes away from developable area. You've got to, if you're going to do a well or bring up water, who knows? I don't know where the water is in this area. I'd have to ask DPW. But if you do a well, that takes away from developable area. They still only get 15 units per acre. So if after all that land is taken away, they can't up that density. It
Right.
still remains at 15, and they still have to meet the dimensional requirements.
Yeah.
And if they want to not meet those, then that's a special permit.
But they could take a 5-acre parcel and put 75 units, assuming they can meet all of those things. So,
Yeah. I've not built a septic, but they're pretty big. I mean, that's the one in downtown that seems to be pretty big, but.
Well, if they do a mini treatment plant and they throw a leach field out there. I mean, we've done that with retail before, and it's not huge. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, in my mind, it feels to me, and just my voice, putting this where it's more difficult to do will help the town not grow too fast and deal with those infrastructure issues.
Yeah.
In the near term, because I'm trying to put 750 units at how many kids per, what would you count the number of children in school at for that 750?
Actually, the superintendent had that figure, right? Because the select board reached out to all the department heads, reached out to the Wrentham School District, King Philip School District, Fire, Police, DPW. Who am I missing, Rachel? I'm missing somebody.
Yeah, they did fire, both of the schools, public schools and KP, Public Works. I was just trying to bring up KP. I think they said that they were losing students. They didn't have, they were welcoming.
Right. They've lost a couple, and their superintendent said a couple hundred students since in the last 10 years. Now,
so the schools just, they're going through the MSBA for their new school. And I think as part of that work, they had done something as part of that. So
I think Dr. Cameron said they had figured.
Thank you.
I just have it off the top of my head because I remembered it, because it's one of the only numbers that we actually got back. He said they did their population studies based on this zoning going through, and they expected it to expand the student base by 50 students, which seems awfully low to me, but that was his take, is that they expected that would have added maybe an additional 50 students to the elementary school district. Junior, middle school and high school district has actually lost students.
Okay. It's less than one.
Yeah, I mean, which doesn't, I don't know. I would have to see the study. Obviously, they did a real study, and it just seems to me with 750 units, you're going to get more than 50 kids, I would think. But
well, I mean, you think of that, that came up with the Ledgeview project, and that 240 units over there. And we had done a calculation a while ago, and it was only out of those 240 units, there was, I want to say at the most 12 students.
I was going to say, I thought it was about 15.
Picking up, or, for the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't nearly the number that I thought when Ledgeview went through that it was going to be. And I know about the bus routes, because I've got inside information on the elementary school bus routes. And yeah, it's not a huge number of students down there. So
yeah.
And then fire and police were like, well, yeah, we'll have to expand, but they couldn't give us any real numbers. DPW, I think the only numbers they really gave us was based on the water, and that's all with the water enterprise, they call it, and they had hard numbers, but basically if the town's supplying water, they can charge enough to make the money back to pay for whatever infrastructure based on water rates. But none of the other departments had any real hard numbers. The student count was not as high as I was expecting it to be, certainly. And while the caveat with the high school and middle school is, yes, they've lost students, so they have room in the classrooms. But if they got an influx of students, then they would have to hire staff. So they had the space, but not necessarily the staff. So they would maybe have to hire up a little bit, but not a huge significant increase like I would have thought. So,
Okay. So maybe that impact on the town isn't as great as I was thinking, but in that,
and that's based on all 750 too.
yeah.
And if we're going to do it with a mixed use, then that sort of mitigates at least some of the revenue potential loss, if you will. If you do have students.
I don't know why, but I thought that I was hearing comments that we shouldn't use the downtown, even though we're already at 8 units. The development being proposed is 8 units per acre. I'm not sure why we wouldn't use that because it's already giving us a benefit. We've got the 8 units. We get the offsite on the mixed use. Dropping at 150 units needed someplace else seems like that'd be a no-brainer.
The only downside in my view on that from a planning standpoint is we lose the special permit control. If we do the MBTA, we can't hold them to the special permits that we would require normally. They still have to meet, as Rachel said, the underlying zoning, but we couldn't stop something because they need the special permit because the special permit part of it goes away.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. The more I think about that, I'm not sure that that's as much of an issue. Now having a better understanding that they still have to meet all the dimensional requirements of the underlying zoning, I'm not sure it's as much of a concern to me as it was when I first heard about this. So I originally was very skeptical about including the downtown because my concern was we worked so hard at building a consensus with the people that were on the planning board at the time, other town boards, more significantly is the residents that live around it. There's a reason we structured it with the commercial part of it closer to the center of town, so it wasn't going to be out toward the residential side that's already in existence. And my fear was that if we went to this MBTA zoning here, that we would maybe upset that apple cart. But now that I understand it, it still wouldn't. They'd still have to do the mixed use would still have to be closer to town. So I don't. My feeling was I didn't want the people of the town to think that we as a planning board pulled the rug out from underneath them, because they had agreed with what we had proposed with the downtown zoning. But the more I understand of it now, I don't see that as being an issue because it's still going to be what we planned on putting there. So.
Rachel, the retail development across from the mall. Do you know how many acres that is? And does that have a sewer treatment plant already built, or is that?
That has never been used. It's been vacant since it's been built for 15 years. So that septic would have to be redone. We looked at this the last meeting, and I think it didn't meet all of it, but it was about maybe 20 some odd acres, maybe. I'm just going to double check that while I'm on the call. The reason that wasn't included was just, I was afraid of the scale of that because the parcel is already set up at least like 2 stories from the main road. So anything you put up there is going to be so much more looming over the neighbors, and because there are private property, there are houses along Berry Street along the rear of that.
20 times 15, but you could put 300 units there. Max, if that's what you're saying, and that would be a tearing down, building infrastructure.
Yeah, that's 22 acres.
Rachel, the buildings that they did build there, how tall are they?
That's only a story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never even been up there. I've never even seen it since it's been built.
I
So-
drove through it once several years back, but I don't know.
Yeah, they've always been vacant. I think right now they're using it for overflow parking for the Amazon.
Amazon, yep.
My question about the height and the looming, are the properties that are built around there, how close are they to that? I thought there's a lot of woods there around that and even some wetlands around.
Looks like about 300 feet.
But I think it's woods there around it, right? Because it's the old KOA, right?
Yes,
So-
yeah.
So my question with regards to that was, if the buildings are looming, but there's trees all around and you don't see them, the
So,
looming
yeah.
feeling goes away.
Well, so I've not done a survey. I just know I'm going through there. There is a wetland. Wetlands go down. So you've got this property that goes down, then they go back up. So it's still going to be rather high to those
Yeah.
people on Berry. But
Yep.
if that's, again, if any of these are where you want to go, that's great. Awesome. Make the decision. I'm not trying to be mean, but let's not
That's
start-
kind of why
let-
we're here.
let's not add more because
No.
we have a very, timeline here, is all.
I think this
Well-
would just be an option in the outlets area. We're still
Okay.
talking outlets area, and just, if we go that way,
Okay.
this one option is taking that. Because that's useless to the town, it's useless, I mean, who pays taxes on that?
The
The
owner,
owners.
yeah, the executive of the,
Would they pay
executive.
more if it was occupied? No, but we'd get sales tax on whatever's in there?
Correct,
or-
right, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not trying to add. I guess here's the question though. Because I did sit in on the call at the library with all the other the lawyer and the other ones. I got the impression, but it sounds like we may be feeling we are under pressure to get a pre-approval from the state before our November town meeting. Is that absolutely required?
It is not. The only
Okay.
reason why I'm proposing that is because people keep asking locations that were not included. And the response that I had is, it's a new law. I'm not the Attorney General. I'm not the state. I can't tell you yes or no. I've come up with recommendations based on my reading of the law and interpretation of the guidelines. And if you want to go a different way, that's fine. Not that I'm the one that has to agree with it, but that's not how it was interpreted to me and how it was sort of shown. So that's why I recommended getting a pre-adoption. You don't have to. We can roll our
Okay.
chances, roll the dice, and just submit it and see what happens. It's completely up to you. I am just here as your planner, and whatever you decide, I have to do. The outlets, and again, if that's where you want to go with it, then I just suggested, because it wasn't in how the interpretation of the law was, and nobody else has given me a different interpretation, I suggested coming up with reasoning as to why. You've laid out some of that reasoning here tonight. That's great. So we just need to make sure that's what we want, or you guys want to go forward. Again, it still has to get through town meeting. Town meeting may decide to deny it, which is that the state has said, if town meeting denies it, town meeting denies it. You've done what we've asked you to do, which is bring something for the townspeople to vote on. We'll determine, we don't know what the ramifications are for that. Will we be considered in non-compliance and not be eligible for any grants? I believe so, yes.
That we don't use, right? That was part of the
well,
thing. We didn't use a lot of those.
Right, but then my concern on that is it takes away points from the state tip, which we just got approved for a design engineering study for the for the Metacomet Greenway. And then it's also going to take away, we won't be able to apply for a MassWorks grant for the downtown project and any of those ones, which that's specifically named in the law. I'm not talking about all the 13 other ones, whether or not you agree with the guidelines and how legally binding they are. MassWorks is named in the law, and we would not be able to apply for that, which we would go for and we would use for that downtown project. Because there's a lot of improvements that need to be made in that area.
How big is the mall property? How many acres?
I think that's like 103. Let me see.
So it's possible, if I think about that site, that's owned by Simon, right? So if things happened, if retail started to decline,
105.
they want to get rid of outlet, they could actually take part of the mall down and create the 700 units or 550 or whatever we decide it is.
And whatever we would require in, underlying zoning, which would be creating like a town center down there, et cetera. If you want to call that the appealing part of that plan.
Yeah.
You might not want to call that. That's okay.
The same can be said for any zone that you create from this. You can ask for that in any of these zones. I don't, and you can ask for a dog park, you can ask for,
Right.
playgrounds, that kind of thing as well, because it is supposed to be good for families. I know that only means you can't set a bedroom size, but
So from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, we've heard about the mall as the outlet mall as, I'm going to say, their preferred. Is that
I don't
unanimous
think they
across
stated
them,
a
or is it?
preference, but they wanted us to take that into consideration along with the ones that we're just going to go ahead and propose, which is the ones that Rachel and the consultant, arrived at, or the two options that they presented us with.
Yeah, I just opened up the deck again to see what those two were. So one of them was around close to 495, but on Wampum Corner.
so far I've only heard the outlets being mentioned by the select board, from what I can remember.
Well, they asked about Route 1, but I think we got clear that it really there wasn't really a place there that made as much sense. Oh, the only other thing, Mr. Rob is English, has talked about the Abbey property out Sheldon Street. But again, with that, I mean, it backs up to Franklin, I guess, to my point about, giving them a place where they can get to a town that actually has a working MBTA station. If that truly is the intent of the law. And the other thing with that is the traffic that does come into town comes in on Route 121, aka West Street, which is already considered to be a highly congested street. And I used to live right there on that street, and I would say that's a fair characterization. I can't imagine it's become less congested since I moved off it 7 years ago. So, that I think is another, Rob had said, there's this big old parcel there and they've been leasing out tracts of land to solar farms and things like that. So they've been doing things with parts of their land, and it may be an out of the way corner of our town. I guess that's kind of is that a fair characterization of his thought process, Chuck and Rachel, do you
Yeah.
think?
Yes,
Yeah,
but I thought
I
at
would
the
have said
last,
so.
yeah, I thought at the last meeting, we moved on from that one.
Well, I think he said his final say and, wasn't gonna push it.
Okay, so now we've
I think
added
he
two.
still thinks
Yeah, we've
there
added,
could be some merit.
I don't know, West Wrentham with its water problems and the traffic, being so remote and all that feels
Well,
like that wouldn't be the place, but
it's remote if you're going to and from it from Wrentham, but if you go out the back way toward Franklin, you come out right next to 495
and at the
Um,
MBTA.
and not far from the Forge Park
Yeah.
T stop, T station, train station. So I mean, the traffic going through Wrentham, yeah, that's one thing, but the backside of that comes out into a commercially developed stretch where there's some hotels, I believe, along that stretch in Franklin, where it comes right out to 495, right next to 495, I should say.
At the old exit
Right,
16, is it like come
Right
in
at
at that light of the old exit 16?
That King Street,
Yeah,
King Street exit, yeah.
yeah, right
yeah.
at that light that if you have to stay to the right to go straight, or you can turn into
Yeah,
that.
if you turn up
commercial-
left and you go up that hill, you follow that comes out to the Abbey.
So
Okay,
you put as a restriction that they have to install a water tower and provide water for the West Wrentham, and no traffic into Wrentham. It's all got to go to Franklin.
I don't know if you could do that.
I know. I'm just,
That's a lovely idea.
it would seem like a big ask, but hey, don't ask, you don't get.
There you go.
you can do that for your commercial or your industrial, the trucks and that kind of, you can say that they can't do,
I know.
but you can't tell people how to get to and from their house.
I know.
You know, where they-
The second
I know
point
you're
was-
joking,
Why
but I just
not?
want to put it out there, on the record that you can't tell people how to get to and from their house.
But
Well,
if we could require them to make sure the town, that West Wrentham has adequate water as part of this development, maybe that's a benefit to the town. Because we're hurting in that end of town on water.
they've been trying to develop a well down there, but they haven't been able to find a spot, it's my understanding. Because
And
that's
if
a
you were going to
different,
the T or the
that's a
highway,
different
that would be-
watershed, right?
Yes.
If you were going to the T or the highway, you would go that way. You wouldn't come through the center. You wouldn't come through Wampum Corner because there's no
No.
easy.
No, you'd be much better off going out through Franklin.
If you wanted to go to the closest T, you would definitely go that way.
Exactly.
And what's the chances that an Abbey is going to get sold and turned into something different? I don't
Who
know.
knows?
It all depends on what the diocese needs are.
Yes. right.
Exactly.
And then once
And
you have
who
water,
can
once you-
predict
once-
that? It's in
Yeah,
God's
once you have
hands.
adequate water, then I'm sure the Big Apple and Cook's Farm will also be looking to sell off maybe.
Yeah.
Well, those will probably be homes at some point in maybe not our lifetime, but certainly in somebody's lifetime.
Maybe sooner than we think.
So it feels like we ventured off of course from what we left at the last planning board meeting was. So
Which is what? So we've thrown out 2 additional sites, right? One, the Abbey, and 2, whether it makes sense or not, the other retail development across from the mall. But are you saying that we've already narrowed down our perspective to something?
you've now widened your perspective to something.
Well,
She's
After
saying,
what
when
I'm
last
hearing.
we met, she was hopeful that it would either be the Wampum Corner thing with or without the town center, and or the
The outlets.
outlets that we
Outlets.
would be considering tonight, not that we would be adding other properties, right?
Well, and that was, my intent was to, because we hadn't dug into all these different sites in the map and understand what we excluded, why we excluded. So that was my intent, was to really dig into making sure we understood what was out there and why we excluded things and why we put things in play. And then are there other sites that we needed to consider as a planning board? That's where I thought we were playing, but I haven't been here in a couple of meetings, so.
Well, very much, I'm gonna characterize Rachel's position as she feels that if we are going to ask permission and not forgiveness, and we're gonna try not to risk not getting grants that we might like to have and use, that if we're gonna do anything but the wampum corner thing, which we think fits the bill and we don't really have to ask permission about, we should decide what other direction we're going to try to go and very quickly put together a proposal to be reviewed by the state, because the state moves at the state's pace. Is that a fair characterization, Rachel,
Yes.
of how you're thinking? Yeah.
And I would challenge the point that we need to go for approval in advance of town meeting. And
Okay.
that's not a path I've heard other than here, is that trying to get something done and get a pre-approval and then bring it to town meeting. I just didn't hear a lot of interest in doing that versus coming up with a plan, getting town approval, and then seeking to see if we can get the state to align. But maybe the tenor has changed, because, and I don't know what the other subcommittees, EDC, I see Joanna McFarland's on, whether EDC is thinking about this in a way of,
I also want to recognize that I brought MAPC on to,
yeah,
because they were involved in writing the downtown bylaw, and they were also heavily involved in our 2-year master plan. And I think they did a great job. Trust me, I've been on other master plan committees. They did an amazing job of really,
I agree.
listening to you guys. And so that's why I brought them on to help with writing the bylaws, because I think they have a good idea of what you are looking for. I mean, Andrea, you worked on the master plan as well.
Yeah, and I can clarify about the pre-adoption review process. It isn't required. You're correct about that. The nice thing about doing it is that because this is a zoning requirement that has a lot of additional, parameters through the 3A guidelines, what the state has been trying to do is just to do that review so that, if something was different in your mapping that makes you slightly off in your calculation, and if you're really close on meeting your minimum unit capacity, having them do that pre-adoption review can just flag any of those little tweaks that may need to be made before you go to town meeting. Without doing that pre-adoption review, you risk taking a proposal to town meeting, adopting it, which would be great, but then you submit it, and this is the first time the state is seeing it, and whenever they do their kind of check against their checklist of all of their requirements in 3A, there may be something that just got missed, because they're looking at your proposal plus all of your different zoning requirements. So it's really just, it's not required, but it is kind of a nice thing if you can get the proposal done into them to get just a look at, so that you have someone to do an additional review beyond what we can do if we decide to help with this, and what Rachel can do in her capacity as someone using the guidelines for the first time, like we all are. If that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. I've
guess-
heard people arguing for and against, and my feeling is I would rather go into town meeting knowing that whatever we end up proposing isn't gonna hit a roadblock if it gets past town meeting. From just my perspective personally.
I kind of think of it like whenever you're doing your local development review, it's that pre-application stage where ideally, like, you have a developer submit their application for like a completeness review that Rachel would look at. The state is doing that with 3A applications. So it's like a pre-application just to make sure you checked all the boxes.
So Chuck and Bill and Jim, would you care if we were aligned with the subcommittees for EDC, Board of Selectmen, and is there another one?
No,
I
that's
thought
it.
there was one more. Before we went in for pre-review?
No, I wouldn't care. All right.
Do you feel we
Say that
should
again, Tim.
be, or do you not think it's important? I guess let me rephrase it.
I don't think it's required.
No?
I think it's always preferred if there can be a consensus that doesn't, like it's one thing for consensus is great, compromise is not necessarily great. And if there's compromise, I think we have to do what we feel is right. So if because at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to, take this stand, take this vote, send it to the town, make one of the 3 recommendations, and then sleep with ourselves at night, So
I guess my question hinges on, I would hate to be at town meeting floor and we present our plan and the Board of Selectmen gets up and speaks against our plan.
okay.
Or EDC gets up and speaks against our plan. And we're hanging out all by ourselves with our plan as planning board and haven't kind of aligned as town boards on what we think is important. That to me would feel like we've done a very narrow version of this.
Can I also add one other kind of thing for you to think about? So even if you were to just do a proposal, submit it for pre-adoption review, that doesn't mean that your work has to stop necessarily. So you can make changes to that. And I think that what you would be wanting to think about is any subsequent refinements that you need to make ahead of town meeting wouldn't change your compliance parameters. So, and that's where, we would be working with you and could help to make sure that, a setback change that came out of one of the conversations with the select board where they didn't like maybe what setback you had included in your dimensional requirement and they want you to change it, that's probably not going to throw things off too much. And we can help you think about like, where are those kind of deal breakers that really impact your compliance versus where is there flexibility so that you can work towards that like board alignment and make sure that by the time you get to town meeting, ideally, it is a proposal that the state has seen for that pre-adoption review, but also you've been able to kind of shop it around town through the boards and residents. And it's something that town meeting members can be comfortable with too.
I guess my feeling on the trying to reach a consensus is just to voice the frustration that I have voiced in the past. Mike, when it comes to trying to build consensus, is we can't even get everybody to meet on the same night in a format that we can all agree to. We've tried it twice. And we've never had a meeting with the 3 working groups from those 3 committees. We've tried to do it and something has gone awry each time and it has not been productive at all, in my opinion, which is why I had wanted to try to set something like this up, because we do have a time crunch. And if we keep trying, if we can't even get 2 members of these other boards to meet with 3 members of our board as a working group outside of having a full public hearing, I think it's delaying the process even more. I agree with you. It would be lovely if we could have consensus between all 3 boards, but I'm just not optimistic that we could reach that in a timely manner. But
I mean, there appears to be, I don't know, call it a consensus. There appears to be a lot of interest around the outlet mall. And if we went and did town center and then whatever, so many acres someplace else, my guess is we're going to be standing opposed to what at least the Board of Selectmen is interested in, because that's the one we've heard from them. So if we went with that one and said, let's do a free review of that with the state and put that one as the option, we'd probably be fairly well aligned. If we said we're gonna do 1A in the town center, and I don't think we'd have alignment. I think we'd be standing on an island ourselves, when we presented it. Not that we have to have consensus, not that we have to, all be on the same page, but it would be nice as a town to be, if we don't agree, at least aligned, right? That this is a reasonable proposal to put forward before town meeting. Because I don't think we will get agreement, but if we can get alignment, then that might be enough. I do worry about town center using that one and then losing control of special permit or having something else happen there unpredicted that is going to take us off of what we've worked so hard for down there. So I do get concerned about that, even though it gives us a reduction. I would be concerned about losing special permit oversight.
And yeah, that was my concern, as I said earlier, that initially, we set that up so that we had control over it. But I'm less concerned about it the more I understand about the way this law is enacted, and that the things that we designed into that zoning, they can't just say, well, we don't like that, so we're going to put businesses all around the outside ring of it. They can't do that because it's not part of the underlying zoning. That part of it is certainly, we don't want to give up control willingly when we don't have to. But I'm less concerned about that now than I was. I'm going to keep going back to the fact that, Rachel and the consultant looked at the law, they looked at the town, they looked at what's available. They came up with, based on their understanding of the laws, what they felt was the best proposals. And I feel like I have confidence in those decisions. And I'm not. I understand what you're saying, Mike. If we go into this and we're the only ones saying that these are the good ideas, is somebody going to speak out against us? But I think I would have a real problem with town leadership that spoke out against another board at a town meeting like that, if that were going to happen.
And you
But I
can
can't.
still you
Go
can
ahead,
still
Rich.
require site plan approval for these. So it's
Mhm.
not like somebody's just has a building permit, they come in, I'm doing this. You still can require site plan approval. And you can
Yep.
still require, as part of that, a consultant looks at that. So you can have an architect look at it, or you can have an engineer look at it. We still have a stormwater permit bylaw. We still have an aquifer protection special permit. There's other underlying zoning that isn't going away as part of this, that will still be, you'll still have a review process for. And as part of that site plan approval, if you find, hey, you're not meeting this section, this intent of this bylaw, that you can come back and do a special permit. So it's, and I maybe didn't explain that in my first sort of instance of this. You can still have site plan approval. It's not just somebody coming in, going to the building commissioner saying, I'm going to build 200 homes. Here you go. You still have to, you as the planning board are still going to review that. And in all of the bylaws, I've tried to put in, site plan approval is required on that. And site plan approval is a little bit of a, if you meet all these regulations, then you can look at parking, aesthetics, and landscaping, and a couple other things. But if you also find in that review, hey, this doesn't match that, you need to now a special permit because you're not meeting all of our regulations. I've seen that in other parts of other bylaws too. So
Yeah, I'm
I
curious
understand. I got the agita. I feel it.
I'm curious from MAPCs, now that you've heard all the conversations about what's now been dropped in as options and maybe not the other ones, so not the retail across from the mall and maybe not the Abbey, but with the outlets, which seems to be the predominant view from at least some of the Board of Selectmen, what's your take on, the recommendation you put together before based on the sites you put forward?
Well, we didn't do the earlier work, so I think that Rachel was working with a different consultant. So I can't speak to the initial sites that had been developed with Rachel, but I did work on the master plan, like Rachel mentioned. And so it seems like the outlets do seem like a viable choice to pair if you did want to do the mandatory mixed use downtown. That could be kind of a good compromise spot. Like Rachel said, you still can apply all of the dimensional regulations. When we were talking about it, just thinking after we've had a few meetings with Rachel to hear the progress that y'all have made, it seems like you do have the village zoning that you worked with MAPC on a few years ago. So we thought the path of least resistance, given your time frame and the fact that you did work so long on that particular zoning, is just to think about how that can be modified to meet the 3A requirements, but also keep with the intent of the village zone so that you can continue to stay on the path that you've been planning for downtown and just adapt that to whatever other areas make sense for 3A. So I think that the outlets could work and be a good kind of consensus scenario. I also think the Wampum Corner would be good because it does implement your master plan. I think that, concentrating at downtown also can be good because you're doing a lot of investments in the businesses there and trying to have some more economic growth and activity there. So using the mandatory mixed use or thinking creatively around how 3A could work there with those additional site plan requirements and dimensional regulations to keep the look and feel how you want it. But that could also accomplish, I think, some of the goals that I've heard you talk about tonight.
Wampum Corner with 15 units an acre, in my opinion, might change that dramatically. You might have to go with wider roads. I mean, the density would look considerably different. I think that one would change some of the town character. What about all that 750 units out at the mall? What about that instead of using town center and potentially losing our overview?
Yeah, I think that if you concentrate it entirely at the outlets, that's where you might start to see like bigger scale multifamily. I think that probably in Wrentham, it makes sense to do the smaller scale multifamily. So I think that's what your village zone was trying to accomplish. So in Wampum Corner, you could have, height restrictions and other requirements to help keep the scale a little bit more moderate so that even though it's still 15 units per acre, it's on the like smaller scale and not, a 3 or 4 story apartment building that would really drastically change the character.
But we wouldn't put 15 acres downtown, 15 units per acre downtown, right?
It'd be 8.
No, so when the first technical assistance we had was with Bowler, using we used for the downtown, used what you guys were okay with in the downtown, which was the 8 units per acre. Use that as a calculation, and then took that amount on the other areas and kept the 2.5 stories that the R43, which is the Wampum 1A area, already has, kept that 2.5 stories, kept all the same underlying dimensional setbacks. And we're able to come up with, I forget what I was trying to find it as we were talking, what that added amount would be. To make, because again, I know it's been a while, as whatever sub-districts we create, they have to have an average of 15 units per acre. So the 8 units, and then this was probably going to have to be a little bit higher, but you're still only getting 2.5 stories. I'm sorry?
22. I think at one point we had talked about.
Oh, was it that one? I don't know, but yeah.
I thought so.
Okay.
Yeah. That's certainly one approach that we've seen. Like we worked with Acton and they did something similar where they did a few different sub-districts. One was 10 units per acre. And then the other was, I can't remember exactly, but between all of them, they averaged out to 15 units per acre, which is what's required. So that you could certainly do that.
Rachel, the property across from the outlets, is that the same zoning as the outlets?
No. That's a B,
Okay.
yeah, it's a B zone, B1, B2? I might be thinking of the B52s.
Okay. And the outlets are C2?
Oh, man, you guys are gonna make me have to,
The
zoning map.
Zoning map.
I
Well,
know,
my-
man, I don't know. God, no,
my-
C2 and B2. So B2 is the former KOA property and C2 is the outlet side.
And the outlet, the C2 is the least restrictive zoning we have in the entire town, as I recall. Because at one point when they were talking about where Ledgeview went in, they wanted to change that to C2, and it was going to allow for 1 million square feet and a
Yeah.
much higher height, the height restrictions were much higher than they are.
4 stories or 60 feet.
Yeah. So if we go with the outlets and they decide they're going to build something there, guess what? We're going to get 4 stories and 60 feet high everywhere they can build it.
Well, you could modify that. So you don't, if you decide to do the outlets, you could modify the zoning. If you don't want to do 4 feet to keep the scale a little smaller.
We'd have to modify the current zoning, right?
You could create a new zoning to replace the current zoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're zoning on top of zoning. I understand what you're saying, and I agree that would be, but trying to get zoning changes of any scale through town meeting is a challenge anyway. So then to change that zoning and then add another zone on top of it, I think would be probably
Well,
more
no, you would just change your zoning map. So you would basically shrink the C2, and then you would have the new 3A zoning that you're already creating would then apply. So it would be like a zoning map amendment. Not like creating two, you wouldn't have like an overlay on top of existing zoning.
Oh, okay, because I thought that's what the 3A was all.
You can do it as a
About
base
overlay.
or overlay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. See, learned something new about it tonight. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's helpful for me. I know we've only got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if we've solved any problems of the world, but
Had we heard from Sukanya?
Hi, yes, I'm from MAPC as well. I think Andrea covered whatever we were sort of thinking about, and yeah, it was helpful to hear you guys speak about it, and I appreciate the thoroughness for looking at the sites. But I agree with Andrea in terms of whatever preferred alternatives that come out of the meeting, those could be something that we could use to go back to the compliance model, confirm what the numbers are. But I think there is an opportunity here for the town to message to the town meeting and to folks that that Wrentham could benefit from this as well. And though that line of thinking would mean thinking about, I think, the school discussion, how school could benefit from more students, or tax burdens that can be offset. I think there might be a place for an analysis here for thinking about how this might impact the residential tax burden on folks if more housing comes in, or if there is non-residential property tax that is being wasted away that could potentially contribute to the tax. So I think there are like many benefits here that the town could consider as well. And yeah, I'm here in the capacity to help technically in whatever way Rachel is thinking about this.
No, not whatever the planning board wants.
As well as the board.
Yes.
well,
She
I
knows
just-
who really
yeah,
loves the
I just want to
joint.
be
Rachel's
able to
just trying to
ride my bike into work every
fading-
day. That's my
she's
dream.
just
Riding my
Trying
bike.
to fade
work.
into shadows.
Yes.
She knows who really runs the joint, Rachel.
Yes, it's you, Jim. It's you.
So
we're gonna get you a motorcycle so you
Get
can
on the
ride your
down
bike
low.
into work, Rachel,
Yes.
from Plainville. Because even when we build these, they will be unaffordable for humankind.
Correct.
mhm. Would we consider possibly doing a combination of the downtown and part of the outlets? Could we divide the outlets and make only part of it part of the overlay? I'm just trying to think of other options that are gonna satisfy all the various interests that are looking at this from the standpoint of the town.
Yeah. Or
You
Or
can't
look
make
at it
everybody
from-
happy. That's something that I've definitely learned in this job. You cannot make everybody happy. No.
My goal is to come up with something that gets through town meeting, and however we have to do that. Because I think I think the option of non-compliance is very bad for the town, potentially. So we don't need to have a target on our backs. So,
no, I know we don't usually open up for public input, and I see Leo and Joanna on. If you had something to contribute, Joanna, from either yours or the EDC perspective, or Leo, we have a few minutes. We could certainly take those comments.
Hi, guys. Joanna McFarland, Bennett Street. I'm a member of the EDC, but as you know from our last meeting, as I spoke with Chuck, the EDC just has not been making a concentrated effort to help out in this without a formal ask. Chuck, I just would love to say to you that, or I probably should be calling you Mr. Woodhams. I apologize.
no, my father was Mr. Woodhams, Joanna. Don't worry about it.
I would still, you mentioned in the course of this meeting that if you could get, let's say, 2 members from each committee, I can definitely get 2 members myself and at least one other from the EDC to meet with a working group. I would love to do that. I feel like, I've been going to all your meetings. I've been listening. I have a lot of ideas and I'd love to throw them around. I feel that there are some things that this group is not considering. For example, we know that the Norfolk prison is going to get 450 new migrants in the next couple weeks. We have no idea. The King Philip's Regional School District does not know how many of those will be children, how many will be in the schools. But hearing the group say that the number of school children is going down, I think it's actually absolutely the opposite. We are having so many newcomers, as they're called, coming into town. I think we're going to be in a massive school crunch, not the opposite. We're not looking for more individuals in town. And I just feel like we as the town of Wrentham are missing crucial other pieces that aren't being considered, such as shelters opening and new school children coming in. Also, being somebody who lives just west of Wampum Corner, just off of West Street, off of Wampum Corner, in my personal opinion, and I have not verified this with West Wrentham, however, I strongly feel that if the town should suggest new housing on South Street at Wampum Corner, that will be extremely strongly opposed. The traffic coming out of West Wrentham is absolutely horrible during school hours, sports hours, church hours, any kind of need to get to the center of town. Coming from West Wrentham up West Street to South Street at that Wampum Corner intersection and trying to get through there, I walk my dog because I'm on Bennett. I have the loop. I walk my dog every morning at 7:30 in the morning, and I walk faster than any of those cars move. Now you're talking about potentially adding 750 units to the south side going towards Plainville of Wampum Corner, and that traffic coming through that intersection. And I promise you, Wrentham will not let this happen. There's just, West Wrentham already is looking at a 20 to 30 minute commute mornings and sports hours and religious education hours to get from their end of town into the center of town. So I think, in my opinion, Wampum Corner is absolutely off the table for a good portion of our town. That does not exclude the outlets. However, I do agree with the majority of you saying that because the groundwork is laid for the outlets, as soon as you let that happen, it will just happen. And I think we do need to have a discussion of, do we want this to happen, or do we want to put it someplace where it might be more difficult to make it happen? So again, I think I'm just going to finish with saying I would love a working group where we can just, I know I'm so sorry, Rachel. I know you don't want more areas, more ideas, more, but I just think we need to throw it all on the table and, you know.
But it's not that I don't want, I love having more ideas. It's just, we've known about this for 3 years and nobody's brought anything to the table until now. It's for reals. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm against ideas, and I don't think the board is saying they're against ideas. It's just understanding that there's a timeline associated with this and just backing ourselves out of that timeline. So November, if you don't want to do pre-adoption, fine, that's fine. That's just my recommendation. I make lots of recommendations that nobody listens to. It's fine. So just taking that date and just backing out to that. That's my only concern. Is I'm a project manager, so we all have to manage our time appropriately. And I just don't want us to keep spinning, you know, all these places. If they're really not in your heart of hearts, the place that you really want it. And I get it. In your heart of hearts, nobody wants the zoning. We want to go Mr. Peabody in the Wayback Machine. But so that's my only, I don't want it to come off as, you know, I don't like ideas. I love ideas. I love all ideas.
Yeah. Thank you, Joanna. That's, and I think whether or not we could get a subcommittee, the subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, which we've had little luck doing, would be different. But let's take that into consideration, and maybe we can have an EDC planning board kind of working session. We're almost out of time, but Mr. Inham.
Mike, I'd like to say I empathize with your feeling you'd like to have a uniform approach of all boards before town meeting. The reality is, in this situation, I think that's not possible. I think members of the select board have made very clear they oppose the whole concept. There are many people opposed to it. My sense is your responsibility as members of the planning board is to comply with the state law, find a site that would be acceptable by the state, and then let the town meeting decide, with other boards saying no, other groups opposing, but at least you've done your work. You've tried to comply with the law, and you presented an option that's reasonable. I am also very much in support of pre-approval. I think that's a great idea. I also think that as far as the town's center, I initially had reservations about that, but I also realized we have a set of bylaws for that. This would be an overlay district. An applicant would do either the current zoning bylaw or the overlay district. They can't cherry pick between the two of them. You have an applicant right now who is very willing to go ahead and comply with the special permit requirements for the town center and have mixed use. They have indicated they don't want to change course. So I don't think it's a real danger of having extreme number of residential units built there in place of what's already likely to happen. So I personally am in favor of having part of it with the mixed use in the town center as an overlay, hopefully never used, and then have the other part at Wrentham Corner area, despite Johanna's recommendations. I also like to comment, as I heard the select board talk about the mall, I think they just threw it out there as an area to consider. I did not sense any commitment on their part that this was the place that it should be. And I think it's hard for us to go ahead and understand other people's feelings. I think, again, you have to make the decision that you can live with and you can sleep well at night, as Mr. Lawrence said. And it's tough being on the front line and getting fire from all directions. And I feel for you, but I hope you go ahead and come to some consensus and among the three of you, so you can send it to the planning board for a vote in end of July. So I wish you well. Thank you for
Thanks.
letting.
Yeah, I don't think we'll back off on our responsibility. It's a question of, I don't know, yeah, there's a lot of questions and a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts. So we have to try to figure that out. I do think it's been a good meeting. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll close it and see what our next steps are. We've got a planning board meeting in what, 2 weeks-ish?
Yeah.
July 17th.
We're out a
So,
month at this point
yeah.
until our next one.
Yeah. July 17th is your next
Oh.
meeting. 'Cause
Oh,
you
that's
don't
right.
have- Yeah, the week of July 4th, you guys don't have a meeting.
So maybe well, we'll talk offline, figure out what our next steps are and see if we want to have another one of these meetings and include EDC or try one more time with the Board of Selectmen. If not, I'm sure I'll be getting a call from Mr. Gallo. We've talked a few times in the past, just trying to get meetings together and things like that. So maybe I can clarify that question about what the Board of Selectmen is. At least so we have the understanding whether we go along with it or not, is what their current thinking is around what they think is best for the town. And whether that guides us or doesn't guide us or gives us inform or doesn't, it can be something we use or we don't use, but it'd be good to know what the town leadership is thinking about this. And so I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Just
Also, I just haven't, oh, sorry, go ahead, you Chuck.
No, I was just gonna say, just keep in mind that if we want to do the pre-approval and we need to give them 90 days, we would have to have something by our first meeting in August, right? Because that would be 90 days from the November town meeting. At this point, we have to plan that this is going to be on the regular or the special November meeting. We haven't heard anything about them setting up a separate town meeting for this particular proposal. I understand there are problems. It's problematic to try to do that in an election year. I think it warrants it, but that's not my decision. So we would just to keep in mind that, you know, we've got basically until the first meeting in August to make our recommendation and put it forth to the state. So
okay.
In the meantime, I did share a scope of work that MAPC provided as to what they're gonna, help us with. So just take a look at that, review it. Let me know, myself, or send it to Andrea as well. On if you have any comments, thoughts, comments, questions.
I think that
town funds or is that a grant?
That's a grant, 2 grants, so the technical assistance, and then I also need to know what you decide on, because another half of it is I'm gonna repurpose an existing grant, our zoning recodification grant that we've not really worked on at all either, to this portion as well. I know, I just have too many projects going at once. I like to keep busy. Sorry, Andrea.
I'll just add, we can't really do any work until scenarios have been decided. And so, our capacity, the longer that you kind of wait to make those decisions, the unlikeliness that we can help necessarily, because we do have a lot of other projects, and we're in a position right now where we can kind of jump on it in July. I was hoping that at this meeting you would have some scenarios that we could start testing, but that's fine that you don't. I want you to be able to work through your process, but I also need to be transparent that we have a lot of other projects and we were trying to reserve our capacity for this, but we also can't turn things around in a week. And so we need time to be able to get information from you, do the work that we outlined in the scope. And if you do need more time to work through this, it may not work out timing wise, but we want to be able to help, but I have to think about my staff and the other projects and commitments that we have.
Okay. Great. Any other comments? Otherwise we'll take a roll call vote to close this subcommittee meeting of MBTA Communities.
Move we adjourn.
second.
Motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Woodhams.
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mike McKnight, aye. 3 in favor, no one opposed, motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming on with us.
Yeah, thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a good evening.